So Rose told us earlier that Advent is a season of anticipation. Our text today told us of two women, both pregnant, both in that waiting period where their families' lives were about to change enormously. Our text picked up shortly after Mary was told by an angel that she was special, that she would become pregnant, and that her child would be a deeply longed-for salvific connection to God. I imagine that for a young person, newly engaged, this was really confusing. We aren't told much about Mary's background, which might point to her being very average, not from a family with a lot of power or clout. And suddenly she is thrust into this waiting. And alongside all of the normal anticipation that one has throughout a pregnancy, will he come into the world safely? Who will he look like? Will I, as a first-time parent, know what to do? Mary has these extra wonders and worries, right? Will he live up to the angel's promises? Can I really handle mothering a child so important? Am I losing my grip on reality? Our wider U.S. culture really sets us up to lean into Advent and its tradition of anticipation. And so that's why I wanted us to spend some time with the Advent story here in a UU congregation. Our stores begin their earliest Christmas displays before the trick-or-treating is even done. The lights go up, the trees go up. We are collectively waiting. And then there are the Advent calendars. Think back to your childhood now. Did you have an Advent calendar at home? Some nods, some head shakes. Really depends, right? If you were raised in a Christian tradition that closely follows the liturgical seasons, maybe you did. Or even if you weren't, but somehow your family had built that tradition, maybe you did. In my childhood home, we hung our Advent calendar every year. I guarantee you it is still in my mother's basement. It was the same one, and we hung it over and over every year. And behind each door, each little paper flap, was a Bible verse. And I don't remember them now, but I'm pretty certain that they were drawn from that day's biblical lectionary text. I was taught very concretely to spend Advent in anticipation of Christmas and the birth of Jesus. And then in kindergarten, my teacher had a disposable Advent calendar, a piece of chocolate behind each day's door. I just heard a yeah from someone, and I love that. Each day, a different student was called up to open the door, and that child got to eat the chocolate. I had never seen an Advent calendar with chocolate in it before, and I was enthralled. A new anticipation. When would my turn be? And back then, small chocolates were the only thing you'd find behind the door of an Advent calendar that wasn't reusable. Today, the possibilities are endless. Advent calendars come with chocolate, with jam, with whiskey, cat treats or dog treats, makeup, coffee, science experiments, tools. Last year, my mother got me an Advent puzzle. It had a small section that you put together each day, and by Christmas, I had a whole Christmas scene. And if you're not really into Advent and the anticipation of the birth of Jesus, that's okay. We still have an Advent calendar for your favorite indulgence. Enjoy the time anyway. But even if you don't give Advent much attention, if you leave those calendars on the shelves, you'd be hard-pressed to escape the anticipation of November and December. First, you find Black Friday ads everywhere you turn. Sales begin earlier and earlier as stores compete for our dollars. And even if you aren't excited about that post-Thanksgiving shopping and it's not something you get into, some deals meet a present or a coming need, not even a want, a need, that are just too good to pass up. The calendar turns, and we who celebrate what we now think of as the secular aspects of Christmas, that combination of secular and cultural and pagan traditions, we are thrust into a new anticipation. How do we strike the balance of getting the right Christmas tree, but not putting it up so early that it's dry and shedding its needles on Christmas? Do we have to take young children to stand in one of the many very, very long lines to see Santa? We no longer watch the mail for the Sears wish book, but we still make lists of those extra things. In our 40s and 80s now, my mother and I still ask one another, "What do you want for Christmas?" No joke, she asked me this morning. I was like, "It is 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning." I'm talking to you. We begin wrapping and placing gifts under the tree as we go, or as they come in the mail. Children look at each new package, announcing who it's for, that it's squishy or that it rattles when you shake it. We plan parties, big meals with family and friends. We make space in the guest room or pack our suitcases for a trip. We wrap ourselves in the security of home and just wait for it to be over. Students wind down the semester with exams, anticipating a much-needed break. We take time off work. When I was a professional Girl Scout, we'd hold our breaths in hopes of the office closing for an extra day, just one day, a sign that our membership numbers were in a good place. And even if we're not awaiting Christmas, right, we await the new year. We talk about putting this year behind us and about what we hope for the year to come. Perhaps we think about resolutions or intentions. We look to the coming January with curiosity or with caution. Everything tells us to center waiting right now, to look ahead. And then along comes our monthly Soul Matters Ministry theme, inviting us to pause, asking us to consider presence, and not present with a T. In this hurried time of year when our days and our evenings are full and anticipation can be found at every turn, there is a call to slow down, to breathe into the moment and notice all that is around us. So then, are we meant to leave anticipation behind? If we're going to lean into presence, must we lean away from anticipation? No. The world is, after all, very rarely divided into binaries with a demand to pick one or the other. Instead, we balance presence and anticipation. We focus on savoring anticipation, the fun inherent in wondering and not knowing. We turn anticipation into communal practices. For years now, a dozen or more of my colleagues have purchased the Bon Maman Jam Advent Calendar. Each morning, they share the flavor of the day. It's a tiny little jar. They share the flavor of the day, and they offer their reviews on social media to one another and to the rest of us. They chat back and forth about their opinions, savoring this season of anticipation as one that fosters a unique community building. This year, one colleague lamented that she'd forgotten to buy an Advent Jam calendar, so she wouldn't be able to participate in what has become a beloved tradition. Within minutes, another colleague had chimed in. She had accidentally bought 2 and would be off to the post office in the morning to rescue our sad colleague from her jamless fate. The calendar arrived at its new home the day its sender gave birth. No joke. More community building born of anticipation. And we can focus our anticipation on what is and will be present with us. The story of Advent is one of the anticipation of the holy. And here is where I say you do not have to be a theist or a Christian to believe in the holy. That can be something that is entirely human or entirely nature or a mix and mash of all. One of the delightful things about Unitarian Universalism is that it invites us to consider how we might take a belief or a tradition that is not necessarily ours and make meaning of it. And there's complexity in this, of course, right? When we draw from religions that are not dominant in our culture, we must do the work of ensuring that we are appreciating, not appropriating. That is, we must consider whether this tradition does indeed belong to some of us, or whether it does not, but we've been invited to make practices our own. And then if that's not the case, we learn from and about a tradition, even if we don't take it on ourselves. But it is different with Christianity, both because it is in our roots as Unitarian Universalists, in our origins even if we don't claim it personally, and because it is the dominant faith in our country, one that finds space made for it at every turn. You Christians, to be sure, are anticipating the birth of Jesus, are joyfully looking ahead to the stories of the teacher and leader who centered his work in justice, railed against an abusive empire, and drew the circle of love and inclusion ever wider. These are, I believe, things that tell us the holy is present with us, not because of the person, but because of the behavior. We don't have to look that far to find teachers and leaders who center justice. Beverly. They're sitting right next to us. They are us. The holy with us as we use our collective privilege to serve our community. When we see the shape of our country looking more and more like the Roman Empire and less like a democracy committed to the care of its people, we also find people working to shape that community care, build systems of safety to meet needs and advocate for one another. again, the holy present with us. And the everyday moments at this time of year that remind us that what is profane is also holy. The joy of children, the chance to make that first snowball of the year. Did anyone do that recently? I'm looking for someone to throw mine at. I haven't done it yet either. The warmth of seasonal foods that will be forgotten once again in just a few short weeks. Savoring the darkness in these shortest of days. The coziness of lights on while we can't see far into the world. The ways the early sunset finds our homes beckoning to us, inviting us to rest once more. Sacred, every one of these moments. Anticipatory, present. May it be so.